We will be looking at what I title structure before supply or structure before elevation, structure before entrustment. Now, this is something that, again, like I keep saying, if you journey the way I've been teaching day one, day two, day three, you understand that I am teaching from a deep level of spiritual depth and revelation, right? Because these are things that God took time to begin to teach me about. You see. So, and I need you to follow this not just with your mind. You will not get it. Follow this with an expectation that the Holy Spirit should give you understanding. But listen to this in terms of destiny. This is not excitement. This is something that when you hear, it should cause a shift in your destiny, in the works of your hands, in what you're building. This is for builders. This is for kingmakers. This is for people that when they hear this, they should shift destinies and their generation because of what they have heard or what they know. Now, we're going to look at today Genesis chapter 1, verse 6 to 8. And God said, let there be an expanse, that's the sky, in the midst of the waters, and let it separate the waters below the expanse from the waters above the expanse. And God made the expanse of the sky and separated the waters which were under the expanse from the waters which were above the expanse. And it was so, just as he commanded. God called the expanse heaven, and there was evening, and there was morning, and second day. Before God started teaching me, opening my eyes to this scripture, when I used to read this, it used to make sense to me too. Like expand, sky, this, but doesn't look deeper. There's something there. There's a reason why I did everything the way I did. Now follow me carefully. The Bible says that God said, let there be an expanse, that's the sky, in the midst of the waters. That means waters was everywhere. But God had to separate waters below and waters above. So the heaven keeps waters above and then waters below. But what is that saying? You see, God created space in the middle of what looked like a mess. Remember, we're talking on structure, the law of structure before supply, or the law of structure before entrustment or elevation. Follow me carefully. So, water was everywhere. So before, like we have heaven and we have water on the earth, water was like this, like there was no space. There was no space like this. And what we have now, there was no space. Because now there's space here, and there's water above, and there's water below, and then there's space. So from this scripture, there was no space. There was just water. Right? So, but God said, let it separate the waters below the expanse from the waters above the expanse, and then there was space where man could live. So God said, look deeper. God created a space in the middle of what looked like a mess. But God used his authority as the creator. God used his power as the creator and created a space out of that mess. There was no space, but he created space. That's the message for you and I. Because there is a mess doesn't mean that you should accept that your life should stay that way. No, you have the power and the wisdom to create a space that can cause you to move forward. You have that authority. You have that power to do that. There are dimensions of manifestations in your life that until you take responsibility and create that space where there is a mess in your life, you will not live in victory, in influence and dominion, especially in destiny and the works of your hands. So God did not remove water. God did not say, okay, let there be no water at all on the earth. No, he didn't remove the waters. What did he do? God just organized the water. Very important. God organized it. God said, okay, even though there's a mess and there's no space here, let me organize this water. Let me separate the water into two. Let it be water in the heavens and water on earth. Let there be space where people can live. He's teaching you something that because you also have the DNA of a creator, you can do this also in your life. Because he knows that on earth, the enemy will be at work to create a mess in your life. The society where you were born, the town, the nation where you were born, these circumstances will orchestrate a mess into your life. Even the family where you were born, you were born into things that you didn't know that they were there, but you met those things there. But it doesn't mean that that mess or what you met in your community, in your nation, in your family, or wherever should define you. It doesn't mean that the mess ups that the enemy will throw at you should define you. You need to do what God did. When there was a mess, he created a space. He organized it and created structure. This is not about elimination. It is about separation that leads to elevation. It's about creating structure that can lead to elevation, that can lead to advancement. You see that now? Because, hear me very well, that began to teach me how, if you don't build systems around what I have given you, the blessings would not stay. And in this Genesis chapter 1, one thing that God did so is that God created systems. He created structure. Hear me very well. What you cannot structure, you cannot steward. What you cannot structure, you cannot scale, you cannot expand it. What you cannot structure or without structure, don't expect entrustment. What am I saying? There are people on this call right now, many of you mentees, you are praying for elevation, for increase, but your life is not structured. Your life is a mess. When you look at that, you're missing an important law in elevation, an important law in increase. And you can only scale, you can only expand, you can only be entrusted with platforms, with supplies, with increase, with abundance, with bigger opportunities if your life has structure. If what you're building has structure. For those of you who are building businesses, does your financial part of your business, does it have structure? Is there a structure of how money comes in, where you spend money, how you save money? Do you know exactly the movement of money within your business? You are missing, if your business is not structured like that, you are breaking an important law in building destiny. Because structure must be there before supply. Things cannot be messed up and you expect expansion. You expect progress. You expect entrustment from the Father. No, there must be structure. This is an important divine law in building things that will last. So one thing that you need to leave from here today is, what are those areas of your life that are not structured? Because the more your life is, those areas are unstructured, the more there are so many mess-ups around your life. There are things that God cannot entrust to you because you don't have the structure to sustain it. You don't. And that is why you see, God only created man after God had created everything. Because God had to put man in the garden, that the garden is created and structured. It's a divine law. The divine law. You have the core areas of your life structured. How do you spend your time? Is it structured? How do you spend your financial resources? Is it structured? Do you structure your self-discipline, your character, things like that? Because remember, without structure or what you cannot structure, you cannot scale it. You cannot expand it. And with that structure or systems around your life, there are dimensions of entrustment you will not get. Like I was talking about, the ability to attract people of authority and power and influence in your life is a spiritual thing. One of those things that you must have in order in your life is structure for those kinds of people to find you and work with you, because they will not work with disorganized people and people of mess ups. So there is a dimension of structure in what you do that when you enter that realm, that order, God now orchestrates people to come in. He now will do his part of entrustment for you to encounter them. What about your thinking? How do you think? Many people need to move from scattered thinking to structured thinking. Your thinking is not structured, it's not innovative, it's not adaptive. And that's why you cannot create amazing things in a spectacular way that can create transformation and cause people to respect you as a builder in your industry. You see, I was talking to somebody the other day. I was giving him counsel. I told him, look, in this generation right now, the most difficult, the most easiest thing to do is to write something. You see, it's no longer impressive to claim that you have written 5 books in this generation. You know why? Because anybody can write a book in 2 hours now using AI. Write 1,000 pages of a book in 2 hours. There are advanced AIs that can do that. But you see, not everybody has structured thinking, innovative, advanced, creative, progressive thinking. You see that now. So it is important to understand the law of structure, because there are supplies that can only enter your life when there is structure around your life. Like I always find it when I'm speaking to men, especially, I tell them, look, as the head of your family, if you are promiscuous, it's dangerous for you and for your family. There are dimensions of prosperity that the Father, if you're a believer, will not give you if you don't choose the path of holiness and righteousness as a man. If you keep having several girlfriends, I can guarantee you there are dimensions of wealth creation that you'll never enter into. There's a dimension of influence God will not give you. Are you working hard? Yes. But you understay at working hard, but you never break through in a way that somebody looks at you and says, see, this is a dimension of success that it is uncommon around here. Because your life is not structured. Your appetites are not structured. A man who cannot put 3 types of appetite under control is a king under potential destruction. Appetite for sex, appetite for food, and appetite for material things. You're a potential king under destruction. And even to ladies too. So you have to create structure around your appetite. It's a divine principle. Because if that is not available, God knows, hey, this person, there's a dimension of grace, there's a dimension of influence, there's a dimension of authority, of prosperity that I cannot give this person because there's no structure to manage it. They're going to mess it up and mess other people up. So it's better for that person to stay where they are or to stay broke, because I'll keep them under control while they are broke. This is a dimension where God begins to operate with you as Lord, not just as Father. You see that now? So, and many people are trying to control what they should create structure around. See, it's easier for you to control certain things in your life when you create structure around your life. So start creating structure, start creating separations around your life. Sometimes you don't need more things. You just need to create divine order around your life. Create divine order, divine structure around your career, around your business, around your family, and boom, there'll be increase. There'll be a release of certain opportunities because you now have the structure to carry it, to manage it, to lead it, to steward it. Because structure determines function. Boundaries that you create around your life will give birth to breakthroughs. Show me a man, show me a woman that understand the law of structure or the ability to create boundaries around their life. I will show you somebody that God will entrust certain dimensions of realities in regard to what He has called them to do that you will not see average people having it. Because God knows that this one, she has grown to a place of spiritual maturity where she has created a structure. She has created clear boundaries around her or him that she now qualifies. Not qualifying as if you are working for it, but she has now aligned herself or himself to enjoy breakthroughs and certain dimensions of function because of the way she organized her life. The areas of your life that you need to apply this law of structure. Remember, structure before supply. God must structure the expanse above from the expanse below and create space. That structure must be there. Because God can only continue to create other things when He has created the structure. You may be complaining that your life is slow. My life is not progressing the way it's supposed to progress. Let me ask you, do you have the right structures in place? You have the right boundaries in place. Because in Genesis chapter 1, verse 6 to 8, this was just day 2. This was just day 2. That means there were other things in day 3, day 4 that could only be created. That dimension of progress could only be experienced by God if He created structure around the mess-ups, around what He meant. It therefore means that progress follows structure. Progress follows structure. It's not just the progress that you work hard, but a kind of progress that involves the hand of God, the power of God, the entrustment of God. The kind of progress that what you would have normally taken maybe 10 years to experience in 2 years, because you have grown, you have matured, you've created that kind of structure that has led you to mature speedily to experience what others take 10 years to experience, but you can experience it in 2 years because of the power of structure that you have created around you. The law of divine structure. So you made a mess in your life. What structure do you need to put in place? When God saw that mess, He created a structure around it. What structure do you need to create? As you listen to me right now. Is this speaking to somebody? Are you seeing areas where you need to create structure? Because I tell you guys, there are dimensions of entrustment in the journey of life that some people mistakenly enter this thing. They just become disciplined enough and self-controlled enough, and then they create structure around them. And they do it, and they're like, hey, you know what? When I organized my life last year, 2024, it's as if everything just manifested for me in 2025. They don't know what they did. But the point is that by chance or by error or by maybe whatever that they did, or by the leading of the Holy Spirit, they just felt that let me put some structure around my life. Let me become a better person. Let me live life better and different. And because of that, they activated a divine law that now orchestrated them to experience certain dimensions of breakthroughs and open doors and progress that they haven't surprised. And when I put my life in order last 2 years, look at where I am today. They could see that, hey, when my life started making sense, when I started taking responsibility and putting certain areas of my life, career, business, whatever in order, I started seeing progress. No, they just aligned themselves with a divine law. And anytime you align with this divine law, whether you believe, this was happening when man had not been created. So this is something that happens, even non-believers, they can experience this. There are some laws by divine laws that favors everybody. And it's one of those laws. They just align themselves to this law, and then boom, there was an elevation. Why? Because elevation will always follow structure. Progress will always follow structure. Supply will always follow structure. Entrustment will always follow structure. Maybe that area that you have long-standing prayer points. Maybe there's a structure you have to create around that life. Maybe there's something you have been careless about, and God is waiting. Say, look, until you create a structure around this part of your life, before this can happen. Before this can happen. Create that structure. Please, don't mix what has different assignments in your life. It's not good for your destiny. Don't mix what has different assignments for your life. Like your finances, don't just mix it anyhow. You cannot take all your finances, you're just spending it, you're mixing it. Different parts of your finances have different assignments. When you have structure around it, it leads to more supply and more elevation. There was the expanse. There was a mess everywhere. There was no space here. But God separated the waters. There was the expanse above, and that separation happened. You can call it the strategy for multi-level operations. Structure can help you to run multi-level operations that can lead to more speed and more results. You see, when God saw that chaos, God did not fix the chaos by doing more. God fixed it by creating structure in that day too. God did not fix the chaos in that day too by creating more water. That's what most people do. What did they do? When there's chaos and there's a mess up, they're just working more hard. No, that's not what you should be doing at that stage. Sometimes when there is chaos, you are not supposed to do more. You are supposed to be creating structure. Like, for example, people who borrow money and borrow money and borrow money and borrow money and borrow money, borrow money. This is what they do. They think that they're going to fix their chaos of debt by borrowing more and being in more debt and trying to use that money to do more business and all of that. Meanwhile, they have not solved the problem that is causing them to be in debt more often or borrowing money and not using it well. They have not fixed that problem. They have not created the right financial structure. So they are forced to repeat that negative pattern of borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. Before they know it, they're owing everybody around them. God didn't fix chaos in this day too by doing more. He fixed it by creating structure. What structure do you need to create? Because I have come to learn that builders build containers before they expect rain. Noah, you have to build the ark before you expect the rain. And the part of the structure that you put around your life is the kind of container that your demonstrating to God that you are ready for supply. Many people have not built any containers around their life, but they are praying for rain. But the divine law is that build the containers first, then call for rain. Asking for platforms without a life of structure where you're building capacity and expertise is a spiritual discrepancy. You have to build the structure, you have to build the container before you expect the rain or you pray for rain. So, like in your business, you have to design separation, or in your career, design separation. Apply the law of separation like yesterday and create that structure. For example, structure could be that what are you working on long term? For example, what is your 2030 goal? And then what is your short term structure? What is that strategic structure that you're working towards? And then what is the structure around your daily hustle, your daily grind, your daily hard work and commitment? It's important. Many people don't have structure around their daily grind, and they have no structure around their long-term hustle or long-term strategic action plan. No structure in that area. It doesn't help you, because when you create structure, it makes it easier for you to enforce progress. It makes it easier for you to take responsibility and begin to enforce that which you need to enforce at your level, so God can perfect that which He has to do at His level. And do you know what? When you create structure, you don't live by public opinions. You live by divine vision. Let me say it again. When you create structure around your life, you know what you're working towards. You know what you're aiming towards. You stop living by public opinion. You live by divine vision. Many people are mixing divine vision with public opinion. Like I always say, because it is purposeful, it can no longer be popular. And because it is popular does not mean that it is purposeful. If you're here and what people say about you or gossip about you, or you see what a friend is doing so well, or the kind of successes they're recording, and it defines how you feel or creates some envy and jealousy, you are still mixing divine vision, your divine vision God has given you, and public opinion and public trends are influencing you. And you're still a baby at that level. And there are things that God cannot give to a baby. He can only give to matured sons and matured daughters. So when you create that structure, one thing that will happen to you is that when structure is created around your life, you grow in leadership. Leadership not to lead others per se, but leadership to lead yourself, leadership to lead your vision, leadership to lead your purpose, to lead what you're building as career and business. Leadership in not mixing divine vision with public opinion. You operate from a different realm and a different dimension of authority and power. So you have to understand how to practice this in all core areas of your life. All. If you're married, get your husband or your spouse on this. Because the more this is done as a family, the better the family can become more prosperous and more successful. If you don't have a system of structure around you with the law of separation working in your life and what you're doing, like we said yesterday, you are disqualifying yourself from certain blessings and manifestation. So when we read that Genesis chapter 1, verse 6 to 8, there are some laws that we see at work to just explain them in more clearer terms. Number one, what I call the law of middle infrastructure. I will explain. The law of middle infrastructure. Now, the Bible says that, like I explained, before what we have now, where there is a separation between the sky and then the earth, and there's water on earth and below the earth, you know that the earth is 70% water, right? And then with the sky that you see, there's so much water above. So before that separation, there was no space like this. But God had to use his power and wisdom to create space in between, like the space we have now. And that's what I'm calling the law of middle infrastructure. And how does that apply to us? There should be that middle infrastructure that creates a separation between input and output in your life. Don't just let everything be merged together. And you know that you are the middle infrastructure at some point. Because when you stand in the middle, what enters you affects what goes out of you. Your life cannot just be aimless like that. Same for your career and your business. So between input and output, there's a middle infrastructure. Sometimes it is your brain. It is your character. It is those midnights where you are working hard and perfecting your product and creating. That would be the middle infrastructure. And what you get as input to work on the infrastructure, and then what you put out, that determines the kind of influence, impact, and income that you get from what you created through that infrastructure. And before increase comes to you, structure must happen first. Increase follows structure. Another law that we're seeing here again is the law of separation, which we spoke about yesterday. So I will not be spending time to explain that again. God separated again. The law of separation is at work. And the law of structure and the law of separation works hand in hand if you will operate from that dimension of entrustment. What you refuse to separate will sabotage your growth in destiny. There are many people that their growth is slow, not because God does not want to bless them at that point, but because there are some things in their life that is sabotaging their destiny or their career and their business because they are not applying the law of separation, as we explained yesterday. Like I always say, as a kingdom person, you don't just flow. No, you govern the flow. You don't just function aimlessly. You don't just allow everything, every kind of habit, every kind of information, or every kind of friend or things like that around you. No, you don't just flow with everything. That's why in this kingdom we talk about consecration. Anybody who will rise to a dimension of operations and influence and impacts and maybe wealth and prosperity, one thing you find in their life is the law of consecration, the law of separation. They are set apart. You don't just flow with everything. No, you govern your flow. You govern your life. That's why you have the willpower to do that. That's why you have the wisdom, you have the power. God gave you that decision-making ability. Show me somebody who cannot govern their daily operations, who cannot govern their flow. I will show you somebody who cannot be entrusted with certain dimensions of liftings. Because they'll be controlled by anything and everything that they come across. Like I said, talking about appetite. You cannot be somebody that your appetite about certain things is just on the loose. Even appetite for entertainment, appetite for social media. It's just on the loose. You cannot govern it. And you expect to be entrusted with certain type of things. You cannot govern how you talk. You say everything and anything to anybody and you don't care. You have nothing like privacy or confidentiality. You just talk anyhow. You know that God doesn't like people who talk too much now. Because he will give you secrets about your future, about maybe sometimes other people and things like that. And if you are the one you don't govern your mouth and how you talk, you're talkative, he will stop telling you. Because you keep risking your life at it, because the more the enemy knows about you and what is going to happen to you, the more you fight spiritual warfare. And God will be like, than to lose you, better I should not tell you. Let me keep you in the dark since you talk too much. Another law that is coming into play here again is the law of naming. God named again in verse 6, verse 7, and verse 8. The law of naming. What you build, but you fail to name, will be claimed by other people, and others can never exercise authority over it. But what you build and you name it, you have authority over it. If you missed yesterday, you need to watch yesterday and understand how the divine law of naming orchestrates divine authority and entrustment that can impact your destiny. So, what are we saying as we round up? Make sure that you understand the areas of your life where you have to create structure. And let me tell you something. These are not one-time structures. Sometimes these are structures that will take you for the rest of your life. I have structures that I've been running in my life for 10 years, and they will never stop. They can adapt. They can change a bit because maybe of different time zones and locations, and maybe, but they are there. There are some structures that they cannot change at all. There are some structures that, as you begin to grow in this journey of success and influence and authority and power and things like that, you begin to understand that if you will stay at this level, this structure must never be shaken. Nothing should interfere with this structure. That means, you see, there are some things in my life that anybody who tries to threaten it, I consider you an enemy. I consider you an enemy of my destiny. Because I know that if this structure is sabotaged, I can stop functioning from where I'm functioning. So that anybody who will do something to threaten that structure, you are a demon sent by the enemy against me. That's why I consider you. Point blank. There's no middle ground in that. And you see, there are some things you will not enter and begin to experience in this journey of life if you don't come to that place of seriousness and what I like to call ruthless execution or commitment towards what you know. You know that this is critical for my rising and my staying significant in this journey of life. You see that now? So, and structure will change how you speak, because you will only begin to speak from the place of discernment and from the place of what it is structured. You stop speaking nonsense. You will speak from the place of structure, from the place of separation, from the place of discernment, and from the place of significance. It will change how you act and how you build. You will build systems that will last, or systems that you can easily update and improve to keep staying relevant and productive in what you are doing. Because you see, God kept on building and building and creating the heavens and the earth and everything he created because he created the right structure at the beginning. You want to continue building your life and your destiny consistently, the kinds of structure at work now, today, in this season, in your early 30s, in your late 20s, in your early 40s, the kind of structure you put in place now will define your next 30 years. And there are things that will only come into your ecosystem because you have the structure to carry it and to sustain it. For example, what is the structure you have created? And the purpose of that structure is to keep your mental intelligence growing consistently at a high level. Because you know that what you're desiring or the destiny you're supposed to manifest, having the right mental capacity and intelligence is important for that manifestation. So what is the structure around that? So structure will change how you build. So it will affect how you speak. Structure will affect how you speak. Number two, it will affect how you build. And under how you build, which is important, is that I said this somewhere slightly, but let me say it again. Structure invites growth and progress. Structure invites growth and progress. God could only kept on progressing in creating the earth because he created the right structure, both in day one and day two. The growth you desire in your career, the growth you desire in your business, in your destiny so far, do you have the structure that can invite that growth? And like I said earlier on, I have come to learn that for you to attract people of influence and authority, kings in industries and politics and government and what have you, is beyond strategy. It's a spiritual dimension of living. And one way to live from that spiritual dimension, do you have the structure that can invite those people into your ecosystem, into what you're building? Praying for divine helpers, and you have terrible structures around you. That's why you keep inviting the same class of friends, the same class of people, and you've never invited somebody who is from a higher dimension of maybe status and wealth and authority and power and influence than you, because you don't have the structure to invite that kind of person into your life so they can elevate you to your next phase of life. Lastly, structure will enable you to govern your life with clarity. Show me a life where there is so much confusion. I will show you a life where the key areas of that life have no structure. You want to govern your life with clarity. Create structures around your life. Every level of your life must be given its space and its naming, like what God did in Genesis 1:6-8. God created that space, created that structure. To govern with clarity, you need structure around your life. So I ask again, as mentees under this community, what part of your life do you need to create high-level structures? Because I know, like I know my name, there's a dimension of growth, promotion, elevation, opportunities, increase, supplies, multiplication that you can only invite. And by divine design, they can only come into your ecosystem, into your life, when the structure is there to manifest it. It's a divine law, a divine principle. You don't align with it, that's your problem. You align with it, you see the blessings of aligning with this particular divine law. So that is it for our 3 days of month of May mentorship call, and I believe that it was a blessing. It challenged you, it shifted you, elevated you to a whole new level of operations and functions and execution as far as destiny is concerned. And your life is not supposed to remain the same after these 3 days of meeting with you guys. Maybe as the Holy Spirit leads, if I feel the need, we may have another call again to share some few things. There's something that I would have loved to teach, if time permit, is uncommon wisdom for uncommon builders. As God taught me that from Proverbs chapter 1, verse 4 to 5. I'll have to teach that someday. Maybe that will be the next one we'll have to teach. Yeah, I like to call it prophetic precision, living life through prophetic precision based on what King Solomon was teaching in that Proverbs chapter 1 and so on. But until that, I think that's good for today. Any questions?